This woman should be in jail. Literally, Hillary Clinton should be behind bars. And so should the people who worked for her who did this. This is so blatantly corrupt. She wanted to distract from her email scandal. She cooked up a plan to accuse Trump of being a Russian agent in order to distract from her own.
Megyn wraps the roast with a brutal truth. Hillary's greatest political skill has always been deflecting blame. The FBI, misogyny, James Comey, Russia, disinformation. The list of excuses is longer than her memoir. But as Megyn points out, if everyone else is to blame, maybe the problem was never them in the first place. Hillary's desperate attempts to stay relevant only make things worse. Showing up in interviews, hinting at comebacks. Floating trial balloons about being ready to serve. Megyn likens it to a washed-up rock star convinced the stadium is still chanting their name, when in reality, the seats are empty. By the end, Hillary isn't the titan she pretended to be. She's unmasked, a politician whose greatest strengths became the very weapons that destroyed her.
Stole his first term as president. These absolute liars who run around trying to act like they're the protectors of democracy completely ruined it, tried to undermine it at every turn and at the highest levels with lies, with out and out lies that were really serious and changed foreign policy and changed the course of history in this country in Trump's presidency. And there must.
Then comes the irony at the core of Hillary's career. Her obsession with power is exactly what cost her power. Megyn frames it perfectly. Hillary spent decades building the resume, collecting the titles, curating the legacy, only to discover the public didn't want the product she was selling. She had every credential, but none of the charisma. Megyn compares her failed 2016 campaign to a big-budget Hollywood film, massive marketing, glowing reviews, record funding, and yet it bombed at the box office. Hillary didn't lose because of Russia, the FBI, or media conspiracies. She lost because voters simply weren't buying it.
Legitimate scandal. She made up a scandal about Trump being a Russian asset. And they banked on the intel agencies working with her to perpetuate this lie, and it appears they were only too happy to assist. That's what this scandal's about. Pieces of it we knew. New pieces are coming in by the day thanks to these declassifications. And it's downright.
Megyn doesn't stop at Hillary's failures. She goes after the contradictions that define her public persona. Hillary built her brand on being a champion for women, but her career is full of moments where she tossed women under the bus to protect her power. Megyn slices through the hypocrisy, showing how Hillary's feminism has always been conditional, a costume she puts on for cameras and discards in private. And then there's the awkwardness, the robotic chuckles, the stiff handshakes, the forced relatable moments that come across like bad improv. Megyn makes them all look like a performance decades in the making, and one that still hasn't landed.
Weird and I think shitty marriage. I don't think she has a husband who is in love with her or faithful to her, and I think I can't really blame him because she seems to have accepted this behavior since the inception of their marriage. And so past his prologue, you're going to get what you tolerate. You know, what you permit, you promote. She spent all of her daughter's upbringing away, at work, at the law firm.
And then there's Hillary's obsession with rebranding. First Lady, Senator, Secretary of State, presidential candidate. Every new title came with a new slogan, a new look, a new Hillary. But no matter how many times she reinvented herself, the public never bought it. Megyn compares it to a bad movie that keeps getting rebooted with a new cast, new director, and massive marketing, only for audiences to walk out halfway through. By the time Megyn is finished, Hillary isn't the unstoppable force she spent decades pretending to be. She's the cautionary tale of what happens when entitlement collides with reality, a political juggernaut reduced to the punchline of her own ambition.
It's a very different ballgame today than it was even 4 years ago, never mind 8 or 10 years ago when she was doing all this. And back to Hillary, the whole, she has a hat she's tweeted herself out wearing, but her emails. She's tried to turn it into this ridiculous joke, like, but the moon landing, like you nutcases who are still railing about this made-up scandal.
Megyn also mocks Hillary's habit of playing the victim. Every loss, every scandal, every stumble somehow becomes something that was done to her, never anything she brought upon herself. Megyn compares her to a boxer who gets knocked out cold and then blames the referee, the crowd, and even the lighting. The gag lands hard because it rings true. And then comes the hypocrisy around money. Hillary frequently rails against inequality and the corrupting influence of wealth. Yet her own fortune and her cozy ties with billionaires paint a very different picture. Megyn ensures the audience doesn't miss a beat. To make it worse, Hillary's post-election career became comedy gold. Instead of stepping away gracefully, she spent years trapped in 2016, reliving her loss through books, interviews, and documentaries. Megyn compares her to a washed-up athlete obsessively replaying old game footage, hoping someone still cares.
Hillary Clinton decided to drop an op-ed in the New York Times today that's entitled, "How much dumber will this get?" And she uses Signalgate and the messaging by Pete Hegseth and Mike Wallace and JD Vance and Tulsi and others on there as the jumping off point to talk about how.
And speaking of Bill, Megyn doesn't ignore the elephant in the room. Hillary built her brand as a defender of women, yet she stood by Bill through decades of allegations and misconduct. Megyn tears into the hypocrisy, pointing out that Hillary's feminism always seemed to apply only when it was politically convenient. When loyalty to Bill was at stake, principles went out the window. From there, Hillary's stage presence becomes another punchline. Megyn highlights the robotic gestures, the awkward laughs, and the bizarre attempts at humor that landed with all the grace of a malfunctioning robot. She compares it to watching Siri try to tell jokes. The effort is there, but the humanity is missing.
And Chelsea Clinton is not a nice person. And I think really is just sort of getting along based on the family name at this point. And so now she's got a daughter who I guess married a rich guy, but is struggling in her own right. Hillary's in a loveless marriage. She probably doesn't have a lot of real friends, just people who are glommers. And so she absolutely does have to write a fifth memoir and go on MSNBC and be told that she's amazing and that.
Megyn doesn't stop there. She goes after Hillary's refusal to take accountability. Whenever something goes wrong, it's always someone else's fault. The FBI, Russia, sexism, the media, even the voters. Megyn roasts this as the ultimate political delusion, blaming the very people you claim to represent. Losing because the working class didn't support you is one thing. Blaming the working class for not appreciating you? That's next-level arrogance. And then Megyn dismantles another myth entirely. Hillary's image as a trailblazer. Without Bill Clinton's presidency, she never would have had the platform she built her career on. Hillary didn't break barriers alone. She walked through doors her husband's power had already opened.
She did need to distract from that email scandal, which was around her neck like an albatross. Trust me, we were covering it every night on the Kelly File at Fox News. She had clearly violated the law with that homebrew server that had been accessed by foreign agents. She compromised national intelligence information. She did things she would never have allowed anybody at the State Department to.
And then there are the scandals, an endless buffet of political disasters. From Whitewater to Benghazi to her private email server, Megyn rips through Hillary's greatest hits with brutal efficiency. None of it ever fully resolved, none of it ever truly forgotten. Instead, Hillary built a career on outlasting outrage rather than clearing her name. Megyn nails the punchline. Hillary wanted to be remembered for shattering glass ceilings, but instead, she's remembered for dodging glass shards from one scandal after another.
Hillary Clinton decided to drop an op-ed in the New York Times today that's entitled, "How much dumber will this get?" And she uses Signalgate and the messaging by Pete Hegseth and Mike Walls and JD Vance and Tulsi and others on there as the jumping off point to talk about how dumb the Trump administration is.
Megyn dives straight into Hillary's entitlement, mocking how she treated the presidency like a coronation. Hillary didn't campaign to earn votes. She campaigned like someone already picking out drapes for the Oval Office. Her entire attitude screamed, "It's my turn." Megyn skewers the arrogance perfectly, pointing out that voters hate being told what's inevitable. They want to be convinced, inspired, and won over. Hillary never did that. Instead, she demanded loyalty, and then acted stunned when people refused to give it.
Hillary Clinton just weighed in publicly again on why she lost. And just in case you were thinking it was because she didn't go to Wisconsin, you are wrong. It is you, women of America. It is your fault. She now sits down for an interview and decides that the reason she didn't win is American females. That they didn't like that she wasn't perfect.
Then comes the most humiliating chapter of Hillary's career, the 2016 election. Megyn paints the scene vividly. Hillary had the entire establishment behind her. The media, Hollywood, billionaires, global donors, all betting on her victory. And yet, she lost to Donald Trump, a man the political elite dismissed as a joke. Megyn doesn't soften the blow. She twists the knife. Hillary didn't just lose an election. She lost the one election she was supposed to win easily. The roast frames it as the biggest political choke in modern American history, a collapse so epic it rewrote the entire playbook for U.S. politics.
How dare she? She puts out this tweet, and it's a picture of her, a much younger Hillary, and the caption on the hat reads, "But her emails." And she writes in her tweet, "Bringing this back in light of recent news. Get a limited edition But Her Emails hat and support Onward Together groups working to strengthen our democracy." The nerve of this woman to have committed federal crimes and to have gotten off because James Comey didn't have the spine to bring it. And now seeing her political opponent get a different result and trying to take some sort of "I told you, but my emails, that was never a thing" lap is galling.
The roast opens with Hillary's biggest contradiction, her relentless pursuit of power versus her lifelong inability to connect with people. Megyn treats it like cruel irony. The woman who desperately wanted to be America's most relatable leader never figured out how to actually be relatable. Every attempt at authenticity came off staged. Every just like you moment landed like a bad skit at amateur night. Megyn skewers the heart of Hillary's political weakness. She wasn't beaten by her opponents as much as she was undone by herself. Her biggest liability was never her policies. It was her inability to convince anyone she was genuine.
And that leaves me back to Schellenberger here. This is page 4 of his report. He writes as follows: "The Russian reports," again, that the Dutch spied on, that we got our hands on, "also claimed," and listen to this, I mean, you probably already know this stuff, Glenn, but claimed that Attorney General Loretta Lynch, okay, this is back in 2016, people, remember, Obama's president, Loretta Lynch is his Attorney General, and her DOJ/FBI are investigating the Hillary Clinton email scandal. And also now we learn simultaneously working with the Hillary Clinton campaign to bury that scandal in favor of calling.
Hillary Clinton spent decades carefully crafting an image of inevitability, a political juggernaut destined to shape history. But when Megyn Kelly takes aim, that carefully built narrative crumbles fast. Suddenly, inevitability turns into vulnerability. This isn't just a roast, it's a complete demolition of the Clinton myth. Every forced smile, every robotic laugh, every speech dripping with entitlement becomes a punchline. Megyn strips away the polished veneer of the Clinton brand, exposing not a symbol of power, but a monument to failure. And she does it with surgical precision.